We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. As you can see, I'm still down or up in Maine doing the podcast from here. But by the time you hear this podcast, I'll probably be on a plane headed back to Minnesota or back in Minnesota. So the Monday podcast will come from its normal situation. This isn't too bad. This is much easier than I've seen before when I was down in Savannah dealing with lesser quality equipment. This is better. This is easier. This is more functional, but still, it's a lot easier when I'm at home. So we had a good time in Maine. Our 40th wedding anniversary was yesterday. We had a great time. And I had a little something happened that I was hoping for. I've talked about in the past where I've been different places and somebody recognizes me, which is a great honor for me. I don't know what they think about it, but it's I get very excited about that you do something on TikTok or on the podcast and people recognize it and have the interest enough to walk up to you and say, "Hey, I watch you." And that happened yesterday. It was kind of interesting. My wife and I have gone out to a number of places to eat. And by yesterday evening, we were kind of full. And my wife said, we can't come to Maine without having blueberry pie. Apparently, that's a thing in Maine. I didn't know that, but she did. Anyway, we're looking for places to get blueberry pie. We hadn't eaten dinner, but we had a late lunch and we weren't really that hungry. So I go into Google. I use the Google machine and I put in Saco, which is the suburb of Portland where a lot of stuff is happening. And I say blueberry pie. So I punch it in. And there are some restaurants, not that many, that really kind of tie in with blueberry something. And then I come across this one that says Portland Pie Company. I'm going, fuck, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. They have blueberry pie. It's a pie company. Let's go there. So we did. We did. Only when we got there, we realized it really wasn't about pie in the sense we were talking about. I'm just messing with the lights here. Sorry. It's a little bright. Anyway, it was about pizza. I should have known that. And we've had some good pizza down here. That's the one thing about Portland and the surrounding suburbs. A lot of Italian restaurants, a lot of pizza. And the ones we've tried have been pretty good. Anyway, we go to this Portland Pie Company and we sit down. We realize there is no blueberry pie, but there is blueberry crumble cheesecake, which sounds good to me because I fucking love cheesecake. So, anyways, we decide we're going to order that, but then we get a small pizza and we have a great time and it's fun. And it's not the big fancy meal that you would expect on your anniversary night, but we'd had a couple of others prior to that, so it worked out fine. So anyway, I'm going to the bathroom, and my wife is sitting at the table. I come back, I sit down, and then in just a little bit, a lovely woman walks up and says to my wife, "Excuse me, I watch your husband on TikTok all the time. I just wanted to say hi." And I was overjoyed by this because I've been recognized before, and it is a great honor for that to happen to me, but it has never happened with my wife with me. So now I've got proof positive that there's at least one person that watches my TikToks and or the podcast. Her name was Samantha, and she was up from Massachusetts with her son playing hockey or something. But it was a great joy to meet her. And to Samantha, if you're listening to this, thank you for stepping up and saying hello. It gives me some credibility with my wife now. And like I say, it's a great honor when I get to meet folks that actually watch the shit I do. Now, of course, this is Sunday and not a lot of new stuff I mean, we got a lot of stuff happening, but not a lot of new stuff. You know what I mean? There's always new news stories coming out during the week, and this is Sunday. So we're kind of waiting for things to happen. That said, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got this whole Israeli Hamas situation. I guess we're waiting for the ground attack by Israel, and this is going to be devastating. This is going to be messy. I don't know how this will all shake out, but I don't know that there's any stopping it now. I know that Howard and I talked about this yesterday, and I want to give a shout out to Howard. Thank you for bailing me out a little bit and being on the show yesterday. It made things so much easier with him on board. He always does a good show. He's got some good insights. He's a colorful guy. He's got an interesting background. So it's always good to get his perception. Anyway, that's going on. We've got Jim Jordan, the new nominee for Speaker of the House. Not looking good for Jim Jordan. He doesn't have a fucking chance of being Speaker of the House. But the one thing is, because I've had some guests on, I have a whole shitload of emails to talk about. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to check the emails. And I'll be honest with you, this is a fly by the seat of my pants kind of show. I'm not as prepared as I normally would. It's Sunday, so there's not as much material. So I'm just going to go. We'll see how long it goes. We'll address the emails, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. But this may not be as smooth as some of the other shows I've done in the past. Not to suggest they're all smooth. Mostly they're not. It's more off the cuff and it's more ragtag, but it is what it is. I am who I am. So anyway, let's get to some emails. Now, this first one, this is a hell of an email. Serious. I mean, it's like 2 pages long at least. So it goes like this. It reads like a legal document, kind of. Starts out with preamble. This is what happens when you have so much to say in agreement, feel heartfelt community. The, hey, I said that and I thought that too, but you're a listener without that ability to interject because you're listening to a recording. LOL. I got you. And I got a fix for you there. Send me an email, come on the show. And then we can fix that situation. Anyway, it goes on. Immediate disclosure. I live in Antrim County, Michigan. Before this letter gets started, I want to thank you, Mike, with all my being for you being you and the platform you have. You speak the truth, in turn giving the like-minded freedom and peace to speak more truths by sharing your platform. I've been delivered, you might say, because let's face it, it has been one oversized hot mess. The self-serving, self-righteous, imbecilic trying to define freedoms infringed all the while infringing freedoms. In turn, we now have masses of citizens drunk on poisoned Kool-Aid. Can't fix stupid, so now what? In any case, you have given me the ability to finally exhale and receive that peace that I have needed. That need goes way before we found ourselves having Trump as a choice for president. I can't believe that this is now our reality, all this stupidity. Ray Bradbury couldn't have written a better science fiction. Let's not forget, I live in Antrim County, Michigan. I know that's a juicy tidbit, but more to come later. With all that being said, let me introduce myself. As well, depart quite a few things I would like to share and express. I want anyone listening to understand who I am before I divulge more. I can have a sharp tongue sometimes, and some get easily offended. But hey, like me, or don't, my back is as slick as a duck's. I can relate to that comment. I have a similar problem. Email goes on. I'm the youngest of 4 with a 13-year gap between my oldest brother and my sister, and my closest brother by age is 2 years. There was a child born in between, but born too early. I plan to tell a beautiful event that happened to my mama because of the loss. It reached my soul because of another precious soul. I will tell it, but because I have so much to share, it may come as a short story in a following email. Always welcome. My parents were born in 1934. Both have passed, my father at 53 and my mother at 86 in 2022. He was from Michigan and she was from the southern border of Missouri. Hold on to that information. It will relate to all the true stories my mama told me. They're still relevant today, positioning myself to share them over time. They were raised during the Depression, lived their youth through WW2, now the severe dangers of cult leaders, Hitler, Stalin, Trump, civil unrest, painful painfully lived through the inequality with the limited ability to stop it. White supremacists, racists, lying politicians, and all that ultimately was torn down. So many atrocities, it's hard to believe humanity still exists because of all the inhumanity. They were not swayed to cultist beliefs, and most definitely not by conspiracies. So lucky us, it wasn't a stupidity practiced in my family. Fun fact, people who dive into conspiracies are in danger of a gripping addiction and what I call a consciousness disease. It is equally comparative to gambling, alcoholism, drug addictions, thievery, lying, etc. It tricks the brain, it takes all the rationality and becomes undoubtedly your new twisted rationality, even if you had any to begin with. It will grab hold and you will ultimately dive down the rabbit hole so deep that before you know it, your whole perception and understanding of the world is delusional. So, welcome everyone with my eyes to hear and ears to see. It isn't pretty, is it? Ultimately, pigs will run off the cliffs, so have no fear. And no, I'm not talking about the demonic Democrats who even started that saying. I'm rubber and you're glue. Better yet, you are what you drink. I personally like water. Who knew this childish banter would have to be used against would-be adults? I'm so tired of the fits on the floor. I just want to yell, sit up, and act right, or it's the corner for you. Too funny they wouldn't try, but they don't realize the room is round. Clearly, we are stuck. Should we let them know? Nah, that would just refuse. They would just refuse to use the exit anyway, even when it has a huge neon sign. Just sad. Okay, back to Mama and Papa. I'm so blessed because of their parenting. What I want to share, hope what I want to share because of the way they watered our growth may grow hope and sow better thoughts to keep our roots strong. Note, it is not lost on me that the following will be like preaching to our choir, but in case there's idiots listening, that is just foaming at the mouth waiting to spit on our mic. It's all worth it. It may shine light, and just maybe if we give them a lot of down on their knees prayers, they might find their way out of their dark. Oh, wait, what am I saying? I need the prayer because it's damnation if you love unconditionally. Woo, out of breath yet? Yes, I am. Just know ahead of time, I'm grateful for anyone indulging me. Well, I'm always willing to indulge my listeners. So here we go. Comforting knowledge bestowed. Let's let go of your worries and by all means don't entertain fear. Nothing is new that has not been done before. God's got this and always turns bad to good. Absolute, you must have, believe in, and know something greater than yourself. Direction. Humility is not a weakness. Use wisdom or you will find yourself a fool. But if you grandstand misguided wisdom, remember the ass can confound the wise. So be humble and willing to learn. Use your head, not your emotions. Be proactive, not reactive. Walk beside others, behind or in front. If you happen to become a leader, be sure that you have the right armor and damn near incontestable. Walk many miles in others' shoes. And my favorite, give grace even when it hurts. The list is almost endless, so I digress. Am I good at practicing those rules? I do my best, but I still have to try. To my detriment, since Trump has validated all that is wrong, I have fallen pretty short of giving grace. Yeah, I guess I have too. But, you got to do what you got to do. Favorite advice, my mama's specific words, just think local. It took me a long time to realize just how expansive and multifaceted those words were intended to mean. So I do just that. I take care of my business only and pray in turn to be a good example. That's good advice. Some people want to take on the whole world. Sometimes it's just better to do your job to the best of your abilities and hope and pray that other people do the same. And if that happens, well, we're better off for it. It works, it fixes problems. It's so much easier to mow your own field and sow a fruitful garden, especially when you're surrounded by spoiled soil and no fruit. Prejudices and racism, not tolerated, and we're not to be tolerant of it. If any of us displayed or spoke with indifference to those ideals, it would be a, ooh, buddy, you're going to get it. Everybody leave the room. We all know what is next. I won't do it, I promise. Even worse, wait for it. Parental disappointment. Ouch. The rod not spared when necessary. Might is not right. Respect, it is earned, but easy to lose and even harder to earn back. Culpability, if you don't own it, someone or something will be damaged because of you. So bring it to the front of the class. You all remember show and tell, right? If you don't, it can't be mended. The longer you wait, it may nearly never mend. Trump and all you fools, listen very carefully. This is what you call integrity. Say it with me now. Integrity. Deep breath, hold now, let it out. It will take practice, but don't be scared. I just noticed integrity is damn near integrate. Who knew? Truth, we must at times own an atrocity that we did not inflict. Only the strongest of people will do this. Put to use, I'm sorry, it can be very powerful and mend deep divides. Don't stand in yours or anyone's way. Cause the next thing you know, you're cutting your own nose off to spite your face. As of today, Matt Gaetz comes to mind immediately. That dummy, what a fool. Or for the words I've missed for so long, what a maroon. Thank you, Bugs Bunny. So here we are, being governed by fools and followers of fools. They have dropped their wisdom in the toilet, all the while believing Trump deserves wiping his ass with golden toilet paper. I wouldn't doubt he has. Nothing but the best for his brand. Better start sifting through those sewers, Donald. You're going to need those precious minerals. Don't worry, wipe the tears. You don't need cry. You already have lots of eager helpers who already eat shit for breakfast. If he was wise, he would have known that draining the swamp would back up his septic. And you are all thinking I was only buttery toast with cinnamon and sugar. Ta-da. Here's the best news. I'm calmer since finding your outlet, Mike. I've burnt my husband out. He needs a vacation from this passionately opinionated wife. Hold on here. I'm losing my spot. You gotta understand what I'm doing is I got this on like Word, and I'm reading it on Word, so it's not always that easy. She goes on to say, though he's always in agreement, he's extremely thankful. He's looking forward to well-deserved respite. Again, thank you for your ears. I've been writing in my head for quite some time after finally exhaling. It has been like turning right back around and holding my breath, but for good reason. I've surfaced for air and feel caught up with the current chats, at least only trailing behind just a few days. Kind of like my Aunt Carol. She finally laughed at the punchline as she was leaving to go home. To be continued. Not yet cool enough to have a Garrison Keeler like send off. We'll have to work on that. Take care, be blessed, and be kind, Kate. That was a mouthful, Kate, but all good advice. And some of those bits of advice you gave are some that I've given, but you did it more eloquently than I do. I'm a little more crass, but I like to think that's my charm. Anyway, thank you, Kate. Feel free to write anytime. And if you have a mind to, email me at rationalboomer@gmail.com and come on the show. Be a guest. It's very easy. A lot of people have done it. If you talk like you're right, you be right at home in this situation. So I hope to hear from you. All right. The next email. Hi, Boomer. Years ago, I was often in DC for work. One midday, I was stopped at a light on Constitution Avenue, the Capitol straight ahead, and the Washington Monument to my right. Next to me was a full-size caddy Cadillac with four guys. Sitting shotgun was Tip O'Neill. He had the seat so far leaned back that the poor guy behind him was jammed even in a caddy. They all looked happy, probably after a nice lunch. If you don't know who Tip O'Neill is, he was the Speaker of the House. Tip was the Speaker for a full 10 years. He was known as a master of finding the deal. It seems so quaint now. Both parties with differences, but with largely common purpose and certainly a common set of facts. In my lifetime, the first guy I remember breaking everything was that fat fuck Newt Gingrich. I didn't really follow stuff then, but I remember being struck that he was absolutely no limit on the level of hypocrisy, and he was comfortable with it. The slide started with him. I agree. That's kind of where we started going the other way. Back in the good old days, even politicians had upper limits on how outrageous or dishonest they could be. Nobody went on Cronkite and said some silly shit, and I miss that. Best Garage Door Jeff. P.S. Saw your TikTok from Portland. You are one lunch-loving son of a gun. Goddamn right. If you make it to DC, we'll have to have lunch at Hawk and Dove, and the spot that for decades is where politicians had their power lunches. Maybe we'll see Lauren Boebert carrying on with her latest date. Happy anniversary. Hope you and your wife have a wonderful time. I've said this before. Here's the thing. When you're my age and you're like my wife and I, our hobby is going out to dinner. We always like to go out to different places to dinner, and we found some hot spots here in Portland and in Saco and Kennebunkport and all that stuff. We've had a great time here, and we saw a lot of great stuff and went to a lot of great lunches, I have to admit. All right, the next one goes, hi, Mike. I just listened to the podcast with Jace. You said something about the people he grew up with still being Republicans. It reminded me of something from high school. Going into the 2000 primaries, we had almost a mini primary debate held at my high school. I don't remember which candidates were there. I went to a Catholic high school and brought in quite a few of the Republican candidates, and we had an all-school assembly. Thinking back, they mostly talked about points that were important to the religious right. One of the things that one of the school administrators talked about was the importance of voting and voting for people who side with your beliefs. I distinctly remember the Republican assembly, but there was not a Democratic one. The right likes to say public schools are indoctrinating kids, but this is a clear example over 20 years ago of a private school doing that. I remember some conversations with classmates who were able to vote in 2000's election, only talking about which Republican they wanted to win. Steve Scalise is out as a candidate for speaker. He's a joke anyway, but that begs the question, who can the Republicans get? Well, now they're trying to get Jim Jordan, but they ain't going to get him either. I think you might end up being right about the Democrats having to save the Republicans again. I'm sure if there's a deal made to elect a speaker that the Democrats are going to ask for concessions, probably a minimum, a budget with no cuts, more aid to Ukraine, and aid for Israel. I'd like to see the Democrats ask for more, like maybe passing something with student loan forgiveness, or maybe asking for resolutions to remove Matt Gaetz and George Santos. I don't know how far the non-MAGA Republicans are willing to get a speaker and get down to business. There is now these are old emails over the past few days, and at this point, this email is wrong, but I get the point. So there's no way Jim Jordan gets the nomination. He barely got 50% of the Republicans, and there is no way any Democrats vote for him. The fact that they are even trying him should be an embarrassment to the party. Well, he did get the nomination, but you're right, he's not going to win. I mean, there's 60 people in the Republican Party that don't want to vote for that fucker. So, yeah, he's not getting in. That's going to be another disappointment. I've heard that they're going to do it like on Monday or something like that, but you'll never see him fail in public. It'll be behind closed doors, and they'll do the same thing they did with Steve Scalise, tell him to drop out, and then they'll have to decide what the fuck they're going to do. Now, I did hear Hakeem Jeffries and some other Democrats did offer a deal. I don't know whether they'll take it, but the deal was that they would give the current temporary Speaker of the House, the guy that looks like fascist Pee Wee Herman, bow tie and all that shit. Forgot his name. I don't know. Well, he ain't going to be around much, but the deal was to give him a little more extra powers so they could actually get something done in the House of Representatives. Whether they'll agree to that, I don't know. Maybe at some point they'll have to. Anyway, we go on with the email. A couple of creators on TikTok suggested that if this fight for a speaker goes on too long, maybe a few Republicans will switch parties to give control to the Democrats. Another suggested that, like we talked about when I was on the podcast, that 5 Republicans vote for Hakeem Jeffries. The creator mentioned that there are Republicans elected in purple districts where voting for Hakeem might actually help them. I'll be honest with you. I don't think that's ever going to happen. That's not a good look for the Republicans. They are not going to want to do that. So I doubt that's going to be a thing. I don't think that's going to happen. I may be wrong about that. I mean, I would love to be wrong about that. Having Hakeem as Speaker of the House, we would get things done, and it would embarrass the piss out of the Republicans. So that would be my dream scenario. I just don't see the Republicans caving that much. They'll say, well, not Hakeem, but how about this guy or this woman, because they're more reasonable. That's more likely than Hakeem getting it. Anyway, all of this chaos doesn't do anything to help the American people and just makes Republicans look foolish. I hate to admit, but I'm enjoy watching the Republicans destroy themselves. Gotta admit, I am too. And it ends up, thank you, Eric. Eric, of course, was on the show recently. He's from Iowa. He's our guy in Iowa. And it's always good to hear from him. All right, the next email. Good morning, Mike. Many of us have worked in a dysfunctional workplace at some time. The blame technically lays with the management, specifically the head honcho. The only way this dysfunction is corrected is a change of management leadership or the collapse of business. It's my contention that a large percentage of managers don't understand their job. They don't understand their duties. Usually it's somebody from the lower levels that gets elevated to manager, and they relish in the fact that now they're the boss and they can tell everybody what to do and force people to do things they don't want them to do. And this is where they miss on the job of being a manager. I've been a manager a few times, would never do it again. It's a thankless job. You might get a little bit more money for a ton more responsibility. That's not a good deal in my book. Anyway, the job of a manager is to make his team productive, whatever it takes. If you need to pat somebody on the head and praise them, then that's what you do. If you need to push them a little harder or challenge them, then that's what you do. But being a dick and having everybody hate you, that is contrary to what you should be doing as a manager. Now, the email goes on. Under Trump's influence, the House Republican Conference is beyond dysfunctional. It exhibits a sort of dissociative identity disorder, the Sybil of modern politics. Sybil. If you're young, you don't know what that's about. That was a movie about a woman who had multiple personalities. Everything Trump touches ends up damaged, destroyed, and broken. This time it is the GOP. His world is it's my way or the highway. Problem is, his way is chaos, plunging off a cliff. He once stated that he ran his business as a dictator. It's all he knows and is reflected by his love of dictators. Trump needs to realize that being a big dick is as close as he will get to being a dictator. I tend to agree. Thank you, Paul. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We actually have some more emails, so hang tight. All right, we are back. Second half of the Rational Boomer podcast, um, direct from Portland, Maine. Actually, we're not in Portland. We're in a suburb, Old Orchard Bay. Old Orchard Bay. Beautiful place. Not the time of the year for this place. There's an amusement park and all kinds of shops and stuff, but we're kind of outside the time frame of the busy time here. And so it's pretty quiet. It's kind of like a ghost town, but that's all right. That's all right. We had a good time and we went and saw some other places. It's been very quiet here, but we got a nice little um, retro, and I don't know that it's meant to be retro, but it's a little dated hotel room, but it's comfortable, it's clean, and we're on the beach. And in spite of the fact it's too cold to go swimming, you can go walk along the beach as old people do, as my wife and I do. Very relaxing. All right, this next one's an interesting email. I don't get many of these, but I don't think it's really intended to be completely serious. Well, it's serious. Let me just read it. It says, Mike, I'm writing to make you aware that you offended me for a minute, and then I realized that everyone can believe propaganda if they hear it enough. The other day, you mentioned hippies in a manner that sounded derogatory to me. As I mentioned in a previous email to you, I am a boomer too, just a decade older than you. I'm also a hippie and proud of it. From listening to you every day for the past 3 to 4 months, I can tell that you would have been a hippie too if you were of age in the late 60s or very early 70s. The hippies were anti war, anti racism, and all about peace and love. We were the activists of the day, similar to the anti Trumpist of today. Uh, I have always been sensitive to the anti hippie propaganda I heard as the movement began to fade in the 70s. Hippies were not lazy, dirty, smelly, or addicted to drugs, as the stereotype tries to make us out to be. Yes, many of us smoked pot and many did other drugs. A lot of us went to Grateful Dead concerts, but we also went to the Who concerts, Dylan concerts, etc. Most of us were hard workers in college and later in our careers. And I know that you know all of this, but it bothered me, so I thought I would mention it to you. Peace and love, Max. Well, Max, I wasn't degrading hippies. And you're right, I was too young to be classified as a hippie. And I don't even know that I would have been one had I been of age at that time. You know, I grew up in a house that dad was pretty conservative. That's all I really knew. I was too young and dumb to really know anything. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know if I would have been a hippie, but I tell you what, I was impacted by the hippies, and I agree with you. The hippies were largely are responsible for ending the Vietnam War. The hippies were a very important part of our culture in the 60s. A lot of the older people looked at them as dirty and slovenly and lazy and all that stuff. And you're right, they weren't. They went out to protest and put their lives on the line, literally. Remember Kent State when a few of the kids were killed. by the National Guard, and there were all kinds of riots and they were beat up and jailed and all kinds of things by police officers. So if it sounds like I don't have respect for the hippies, that's not true. I remember being a little kid, in the 60s, I was in the single digits. We used to get in a car with my mom and dad, my brother and I, and we would go to our grandparents' house in Robbinsdale, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. And we would go through downtown Minneapolis. And there was a place in downtown Minneapolis, still there, but it's not the same situation. It was called Seven Corners. And there were coffee shops and the types of head shops, types of shops you would expect in the 1960s. And my brother and I would be riding in the back seat, and we'd go through this part of town and it was just filled with hippies, and they were all dressed weird compared to everybody else, the long hair and the granny glasses and all that stuff. And my brother and I took great joy in going through that part of town because we found it very entertaining. We called it hippie town because that's what it was to us. We never had any ill feelings about hippies. It was just an oddity for us, being little kids growing up in South Minneapolis with a conservative dad. And back then, um, conservatism wasn't what it is now. I'm not saying it was good, but that's all I knew. But there was one experience that I had with a hippie directly. My brother and I, and my sister actually. My father worked in the advertising business, and as I look back at it, it was very much like the TV show Mad Men. All these guys in suits, smoking a lot and having parties and drinking a lot. That's kind of what it was. And my dad was a young man in the 60s. He was in his 20s, but he was doing well in the advertising business. And one of his customers was a company called Shopper, which was a game company that happened to be in Minnesota. And his company would create the covers and the advertising and all that for it. So at one point, um, my dad had set it up that my brother and I and my sister would be on the cover of a game. Clean Sweep, I think it is, or Don't Spill the Beans, or one of those fucking things. So anyway, we go to this photographer friend or associate my dad had. Nice guy. His name is Vern. And we went there and we were taking shots, and we aren't models. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're just playing this game, doing what we're told. And this photographer's son came home. Don't remember his name, but he was a full out hippie. And he was a nice guy, nice guy. And as we're sitting there trying to take these shots and we got them, my brother and I were distracted because we were dying to go into a real hippie's room, see what it looked like. So after we did the shots and all that stuff, um, the hippie guy came out, and my brother, being pretty bold, said, "Can we see your room? You look kind of weird." And he says, "Sure, come on in." So we go in, everything you'd fucking expect: incense, black lights, posters, Jimi Hendrix, all this shit. And it was the coolest thing ever for 7, 8-year-old kids. And we lived off that for probably 6 months. Oh, there goes those guys. They were actually in a hippie's bedroom. But it was an experience. So don't think that I have any ill will toward hippies. I don't. I didn't know many because I was very young at the time, but I'm well aware of the value they added to society back then, the good that they created, and they did a lot of good. However, I have a question for this hippie. A lot of those people of that era are now the rich fat cats that are greedy motherfuckers. And that is my question. How do people who come out of that era with that mindset all of a sudden become owners of companies and are worried about profit and not about the things they were worried about back in the day? Now, I'm sure that's not the case with all of them. I know there are still hippies just living like they did in those days, but some of these guys Some of these guys who were kind of that era now have changed their minds. And I guess it comes down to as you get older, maybe you get a little more conservative. As you make some money, you decide you want to keep all your money and not share it with everybody. Uh, but again, I don't dislike hippies. I wasn't trying to begrudge them. But there are some I would have some questions for at this point. All right. And thank you, Max, for the email. And Max makes a good point. If there's something I say that offends you or that you don't agree with, don't hesitate to write. I don't take any of that personally. I might debate you on it, but I'm not going to get angry or block you or anything like that. I'm all for people having different opinions about things because honestly, I'm not always right. And there are times when people will challenge me and I'll listen to them. I go, fuck, you're right. You're absolutely fucking right. All right. The next email. Hi, Boomer. Happy 40th. She must indeed be a resilient woman. Yes, she is. I'm wondering if this thing could play out as follows. Once Jordan is soundly rejected Monday, we start to hear 1 to 2 names that we've generally never heard. Quietly and with no press or reporting of any kind, Hakeem quietly works on an agreement, or at least guiding principles, with one of these cats. Repubs nominate him, bring him to the floor, and the Democrats, almost as if by surprise, support the person and put them in. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Not sure if I'm naive of thinking it could go that way or for thinking it could go any other way than that, Jeff. Well, the thing about it is that's not a bad idea. I mean, it may take something like that to get this done because the moment they think that the Republicans or the Trumplifucks specifically, the moment they think that the party is going to work with the Democrats, they're going to do everything they can to burn that shit down. There's just no question about it. So to slip it in there secretly, that's not out of the realm of possibility. I think that may be a good point. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that something better fucking happen quickly because it is an absolute shit show. And every day it goes like it is, and every failure the Republicans have, the worse they look, and they know it. And on this email, they finish out P.S. Am I the only person feeling guilt pains over even thinking of U.S. politics with the situation that we have in the Middle East? Guilt? No, I wouldn't feel guilt. I mean, as I've said before, this whole situation in the Middle East has been going on and on and on and on since the 40s, late 40s. I don't feel guilty about looking at what's going on in this country over what's happening in Israel and the Gaza Strip because all around the country, in less promoted or less publicized wars or genocides or atrocities, this is stuff going on around the country all the time. There are a lot of things we could focus on. But as I've told you before, we can't really help anybody unless we're healthy. And this country is not healthy. We don't have the ability to focus on any one thing because we have such a shit show here. So I wouldn't feel guilt. I would think the faster we can clean ourselves up, clean up our own backyard, well, then we can do much better in helping other people. That doesn't mean that I'm saying ignore them and don't help out where you can, but we're not in a position where we can just disregard or put on hold all the things that are going on. Let me remind you, we have a Republican Party that tried to overturn an election, overthrow the government. There is nothing more serious than that. If we don't tend to that, we may not have a democracy a year from now. So it's important we make ourselves healthy so that we can actually help people. I think I made this comparison before since I'm going to be on a plane today. They always tell you if we lose cabin pressure, the air mask comes down. And if you're with a child, make sure yours is on first and then put the kids on. They're not trying to disregard or diminish the kids. The thing is, the kids can't help themselves. So you need to be healthy. You need to have the air so you can assist the kid. And largely it's the same thing with America and the rest of the world. We have been the people that been kind of the police or the benefactors of people around this country. That's kind of our job given to the state and how big we are. But we've been weakened by what's going on in our political situation. And because we're weaker, we're less able to help other people. So we do have to get ourselves healthy. Do not feel guilty about focusing on what we've got here. Because it's not like it's Watergate, where somebody cheated in an election or broke into an office of the Democratic Party. It's much bigger than that. And we need to think about what's going on here, not even for our sake, but for the sake of our kids and our grandkids. Those of us that are older in our 60s or 70s, maybe older than that, we should be thinking about what are we going to leave our kids and grandkids and great grandkids with. That should be our priority. Clean up your own backyard and then do what you can to help everybody else. You always hear the term, oh, that guy would take the shirt off his back. Now, I will tell you this, and this may sound selfish, but it's based on what I just said. I will help anybody I can, but not to the detriment of myself. I mean, my wife's just the opposite. If we had $10 to our name and somebody needed it, she's give it to them. And I wouldn't, because I got to keep myself, my family healthy. And as I build whatever health that we have in the family, then I can do more good. But it does no good to help people at your own detriment, because then that takes you out of the game. That makes no fucking sense. It's a more long-term thinking. And some people might see it as selfish, but I don't think it is. I think it's quite the opposite. Now, we were talking about the situation with Jim Jordan. And I think it's pretty clear, even though they aren't really going to take votes until Monday, tomorrow, that Jim Jordan has no chance. I told you that before. I mean, what fucking parallel universe do they imagine that a guy who came in second to Steve Scalise and Steve Scalise couldn't get elected? In what parallel universe makes sense that Jim Jordan can get elected? Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So then we talk about the prospect of the Republicans, the reasonable-minded Republicans, working in conjunction with the Democrats to get this deal done. So we've got somebody who can get things moving in the House of Representatives. Well, the Trump-the-fucks aren't feeling too good about this, and they're making threats. And I think the most silly threat that I just heard is worth talking about. Let's talk about George Santos, the New York Republican who is currently under indictment for alleged fraud, reportedly threatened. George Santos threatened to resign Saturday from his position if Republicans reach a deal with Democrats to elect a Speaker of the House. Why would he do that? Well, he thinks he's got some leverage. This guy has 33 charges, felony charges against him. He's going to get kicked out at any point soon. I'm sure he thinks if he gets somebody that is not amenable to him in the speakership, they're going to kick him out anyway. But why does George thinks this is a legitimate threat? Well, it's because the Republicans have a slim majority. If they lose more people, that majority could go away. And then Hakeem Jeffries could be the Speaker of the House. Here's a guy in complete desperation. He's basically saying, if you don't do what I want to do, if you don't stick with MAGA, I'll shoot myself. Go ahead, motherfucker. Go ahead. You want to quit? Go ahead. I would love to see it. All the Democrats and half the Republicans would love to see it. But this is how desperate he is. He's got nothing else to leverage. He's tried everything and nothing has worked. So this is all he has left. Now, the thing about it is that Santos has been a supporter of Jim Jordan as Speaker. And he'd admitted he felt spurned by the earlier GOP nominee, Steve Scalise, who Santos said never called him to jockey for the congressman's support in a vote. Why would he call George Santos? You're a fucking joke. Just based on that, I'd be more likely to vote for Scalise. Anyway, after Scalise dropped out of the race, Jordan became the nominee, but there are serious doubts as to whether he can unite the conference. We know he can't. He's a joke in the Republican Party. He's a joke in the House of Representatives. What's he been in office 13 years and he has had 0 bills passed? If he's in the House of Representatives and he represents a district in Ohio and he's never passed a bill, what the fuck is he doing? That is essentially the job of a representative. Well, we know what he's doing. He's being strictly a shit stirrer, and he's just making noise, talking loud, talking proud, and talking bullshit and lies. And they want to put him up for Speaker of the House. Putting him in as Speaker of the House would be dangerous because he does cater to Donald Trump. He does cater to the MAGA fucks. And apparently George Santos and he are best buddies. Now, on Saturday, Santos reportedly took his position a step beyond what he's previously proclaimed. Despite resisting calls to resign based on his indictment and superseding indictments, Santos apparently offered his resignation in exchange for a mere compromise. Aziz Pebara of the Washington Post listened in on an X Spaces updated audio update on Israel and Hamas during the event. Santos reportedly said, "It's about time we end our membership in the UN." Oh, there's a good idea. Fucking brilliant. Santos also said, "We need to call out the fake stuff," according to Pebara. Finally, according to the report, Santos threatened to quit. Representative Santos, who's resisted calls to resign. I mean, people beg him. That's what I get a kick out of. If you don't do what I want to do, I'm going to resign, when half the fucking or 3/4 of the House of Representatives have been begging him to resign. He says he would resign from Congress if R's and D's worked together to elect a House Speaker. The report was also confirmed by Talking Points memo publisher Josh Marshall. See, that's the irony of this whole thing. What is the House of Representatives there for? It's for negotiation and compromise. But this is the essence of the Republican Party. Only vote for Trump-la-fuck shit. Always try to own the libtards. It's contrary to the whole purpose of the House of Representatives. But that's what George Santos wants. Question I have is, why is anybody listening to George Santos? He's a fucking joke. He's got 33 felony charges. He's going to court, and he is without question going to jail. And the Republican Party is still listening to this dumb fuck? I got to tell you, It's disappointing, to say the least, that this guy has any voice at all. And I will tell you this, if George Santos is going to resign, if there's any deal between the Republicans and Democrats, you might want to start packing up some boxes as we speak. What he's trying to do is trying to get everybody scared. Oh, we'll lose the majority if he quits, so I'll just vote for Jordan. Problem with that is you've got a choice. You lose George Santos or you vote for Jim Jordan. What's a bigger loss for this country? He thinks that by making this threat, he's going to get the Republicans to side with him and say, oh, okay, don't do that, George. We'll vote for Jim Jordan. The fact of the matter is making Jim Jordan the Speaker of the House is far more detrimental than George Santos leaving. In fact, that would be the best of both worlds. George Santos leaves and Jim Jordan doesn't get elected. And the bottom line is he's not going to get elected. He's not. There are some other people, like I said in the podcast yesterday, now everybody's going, I'll run, I got dibs. There ain't nobody. The only option the Republicans have is to work a deal with the Democrats. The Democrats have 212 votes. The Republican Party can't unify at all. So while they have 218 representatives or 217, or actually 220, 222, depending on who's there and who's not there, but they need 217 votes to elect a Speaker of the House. And so the whole Republican caucus can't come together. Like I say, Jim Jordan wants to be Speaker of the House, but he's got 60 Republicans that absolutely will not vote for him. What's that fucking tell you? He's got no chance. And if not Jim Jordan, what are you going to put up Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Matt Gaetz, for God's sake? None of them can get the votes. And this is the problem the Republicans have put themselves in. They've had opportunities to separate themselves, to diminish the MAGA party, the Freedom Caucus, if you will. But they've always stepped back from it. It's as if they are afraid of these people. And I don't understand that, because the fact of the matter is there's only 30 to 35 MAGA fucks in the caucus, in the House. And there's 220 other Republicans. What are you afraid of? What the fuck's the problem? The way it's going right now, and whoever becomes Speaker of the House is going to be another shot across the bow regarding MAGA. The whole idea of kicking Kevin McCarthy out is looking like a huge mistake, and that's on the Freedom Caucus, MAGA. They are embarrassed by that. And of course, the Republican Party in general is embarrassed by it because they allowed it to happen. They need to separate themselves from MAGA. They need to get rid of them somehow. And the only way that's going to happen is either we put them in jail, which could happen, or we vote them out in 2024. And this is what I've always said. As much as we want to fix things now, even if we get a reasonable Speaker of the House, we're still going to have problems. The only way we fix these things is by electing a majority of Democrats in the House and a majority of senators, Democratic senators in the Senate. That's the only way it's going to work. And we have to do that. And it shouldn't be that much trouble. I mean, Donald Trump has done everything he can to ruin the Republican Party, between overturning Roe v. Wade, the gun issue, the violence, the insurrection, the corruption, the criminality. There is no reason in the world Republicans should win any race come 2024. Unfortunately, we have some districts and some dumb fucks in those districts that will vote for the Marjorie Taylor Greens and such. So then it's on the DOJ to do something about it. These people are criminals. It's time to make them accountable. It's time to indict and put them through the process. As I've told you before, Donald Trump is not going to be the nominee because he just simply will be marginalized so much. I mean, it's even being talked amongst Republicans now, trying to get big time donors to do whatever they can to dump Donald Trump. Now they're finally seeing the light. Oh, Donald Trump's a problem for us. We need to get rid of him. Yeah, bitches, you should have done that 2.5, 3 years, 4 years ago. Because had you done that, you would have been in a much stronger position now going into 2024. I'd be willing to say that going into the 2024 election for president, senators, reps, whoever, the Republicans have never been this weak, never had these many problems. I mean, the Republicans are known for having problems and doing fucked up shit, but they've never been weaker than they are now. And the best part of that is they understand that. So they're finally trying to separate themselves from Donald Trump. But guess what? Too fucking late. It's too fucking late. You are now completely immersed in the stench of Donald Trump, and you are going to be hard pressed to get that shit off of you. It's not going to be easy. In fact, I'm likely to expect that it's not possible at all. There are many people in the Republican Party that after 2024, you will never see them in office again because of what they've been involved in, what they believed in, and who they supported, meaning Donald Trump and some of the other MAGA fucks. Even people who are thought to be reasonably minded because they stood there and didn't do anything about MAGA, they're going to pay the price too. And unfortunately, as much as I'd like to fix things tomorrow, I really honestly believe it's not going to happen to any great amount until 2024. And when it comes to 2024, then it's on all of us. We got to get down, get to business, vote, and kick these motherfuckers out. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day back in Minnesota tomorrow, and we'll talk to you then.